Hello everybody, welcome to TraderMerlin Show. We have a special show today, something you guys have been asking me about a lot, which is Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into an interesting topic I think some of you appreciate. And by the way, Brendan says, I'll bet you $20 that Bitcoin will be at $200,000. Yeah, I could see why. And well, hopefully you guys can formulate an opinion about what you think might happen to something like Bitcoin over the next couple years based off of just pure math. That's really all this is about, is just a mathematical structure, which is, if you think about it, that's exactly what Bitcoin is. So my thesis is this, that Bitcoin will be at least $100,000 by 2023. And what I mean by 2023, I'm saying by December 31st, 2022, it'll have hit $100,000 at some point. That's pretty much what I'm going to call it. All right. So Tom is scared, nervous about the tulip thing. Tulip thing was completely ridiculous. If you look back in history and look at the tulip bubble crisis that happened in Holland, that was just futures contracts getting out of hand and basically the greater fool theory. I'm hopefully going to show this to you from a perspective of something we can all relate to, which is going on in our lives right now, which is the devaluing of U.S. currency. Our fiat currency is dying, so is the euro, so is the yen, so is the pound. It's all going down to some extent because of what has been going on behind the scenes. So, let me start off. Let me bring the screen over here. Why will Bitcoin be $100,000 by 2023? I have some, I'll just say, solid points here. I want to start off by asking you guys questions, though, because I want interaction today. When we look at what drives price, I ask you, what drives the price of anything? And we can steer it away from Bitcoin. We can steer it into, I've got myself a nice bag of Pacific Gold beef jerky over here. I've got my iPhone. I've got some Kirkland organic cashews, which I love eating, by the way. You know, all this stuff has prices attached to it, and it's all driven by what? I mean, you guys tell me what drives everything, and the difference here is what fundamentally is going to fuel Bitcoin to $100,000 plus over the near future. So bottom line is, when we look at what drives price of anything, it is what Gary just put in, and Thomasina. It's supply and demand, and I don't care what it is that you're buying, okay? You look at Online Trading Academy's core strategy that we teach, it's predominantly about supply and demand. And Buttoneye says demand, you got to have supply in there. You can have demand all you want, but if there's no product to sell, the price isn't going to go anywhere, right? There's nothing to sell. Joseph says Robin Hood. I love it, Joseph. Thank you. So, yeah, guys, it is simply supply and demand. That's it. It's the only two things. However, there is a couple other factors here that we want to address. And I want to start off by looking at your traditional mechanism for price discovery. So when we look at what causes our minds to buy or settle on a goods and service, it's actually rather basic. You guys might remember this from your economics class or back in high school or college, depending when you took it. Nowadays, it's like you take this in the second grade here in the States. You basically have this two lines, right? You got the blue line is supply, green line, or red line is demand. And if you've got a ton of demand and very low supply, like over here on the hard right edge, or hard left edge, you know, price is going to be really high, right? You're trying to find that equilibrium, and what happens is we adjust supply to meet demand to get the desired price, kind of like with iPhones and these other products that we all buy. That's the traditional mechanism for price discovery, and while generally it works, there's a flaw, a monster flaw with that system, and the basic case study we can have for that one, and Brendan, I know, is screaming at me probably to say this right now, it's fiat currency. Right? This is why we are in a situation where my purchasing power of my dollar has just gone down and down and down and down and down. If you look at where the Federal Reserve was created back in 1913, and I apologize for the quality of the graphics here, guys. I was up to the wee hours scrambling and put this together as I got a bunch of stuff going on. My really good friends just left town, so we were celebrating, and I got presentations and stuff. So I apologize, I didn't redo the graphics here. But you can see since 1913, the value of your US dollar has dropped about 97%. I think it might have bounced up a little bit recently. It's like 93%, but I don't care. It's 90% at least decline in value, and that goes to 2016 when this image was captured here. So it's due to a lot of things. Obviously, being removed from the gold standard, you have the Bretton Woods, end of the Bretton Woods Agreement, etc. So we look at this, and the reason that this happens, and I'm going to add another line. Watch at the bottom on the left side of your screen, 1913, a blue line is going to start to form. This is the money supply. And really, starting in the 70s, there was a pretty big surge in money supply. This is just a 2016, guys. I didn't even include the last 4 years, which, what do you think those look like? It's parabolic off the charts, which just further devalues our currency. The problem for that is it prevents true price discovery because you're constantly tampering with one of those variables. And at this point, our Federal Reserve and federal banking system has just gone psycho with regard to their printing because they haven't seen it do any real damage yet, right? I think it could show some serious damage in the near future. We'll have to wait and see how it all transpires. But as of this moment, they're not seeing any real ramifications for this colossal printing of money. So here's where it starts to change with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is certainly driven by the factors of supply and demand. I mean, we know that more people are getting into it, and there's the supply side is where I want to start. There's one other variable that you don't see with the US dollar, and that is this concept of destruction. Now, destruction is, well, I'll ask you guys what is destruction, but there's destruction is the last element there that I wanted to bring up. Let's start off with the supply side of Bitcoin. And again, as we progress, guys, feel free to send in your comments and questions. I'm going to try, if it's right on the topic that I'm going to be going into as of this moment, I will definitely hit it up. I'll probably have to scroll back through at the end. At the end of this, I'll do an open Q&A on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies if you like. But I want everyone to understand just the math here and why I'm definitely an advocate of Bitcoin, and I think that there's a great potential for it to go higher. All right, so let's go to the basics of supply. Our problem with the Federal Reserve is what, guys? They can print at their will. I mean, I wish I could just open up my phone app right now and go, oh, shoot, I've only got 4,000 in my bank account. I want 40,000. Just add another zero on there. That's what the Fed can do without any oversight. We can't. That's called stealing or fraud, or I don't know. I'm sure it's a criminal offense somewhere. You can do that with fiat currencies. You cannot do that with Bitcoin, and I'll show you why. It's called the emission curve, and honestly, when you look at the white paper that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote back in 2009, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant from an architectural standpoint on creating this system. Here's how it works. If we take the basic emission curve, or basically the supply curve of Bitcoin, this is why I think it has so much power. So I'm going to explain a lot of things here, and it might get confusing to some of you, but I want to make sure that you guys all understand it. So if you don't get it, just keep asking questions, and I'll make sure I make this as clear as day, because this is the backbone of why you're going to see Bitcoin soar. On the left axis, you have the total amount of supply, and you see a blue dashed line went across the top of your screen. It's in the program that there will be no more than 21 million Bitcoins ever. So there is a fixed amount of supply. That supply number will not change past the maximum. Now, it's changing as we speak, meaning it's increasing right now, but it has a ceiling on it of 21 million. There will not be any more than that. And every cryptocurrency is different, guys. You look at Litecoin, they've got like 84 million maximum. You know, Ethereum's over 100 million. You got 100 billion Ripple out there. There's always numbers to most of these cryptocurrencies. Many of them have the ability to increase that supply. With Bitcoin, they do not. It's fixed. So I'll show you how it's been going since 2009. You'll also notice at the bottom here is called blocks. You see this little line that says blocks. Blocks are the backbone of Bitcoin. We won't get into too much of the architecture, but basically every block is a record of all the transactions that took place in a 10-minute window of time, right? It's all that could pack in there. Some might not made it in because there was just too much, the block isn't big enough to accommodate. That's another topic. But basically, we're looking at every 10 minutes is about a new block. So the way that he designed this is there's a reward for miners. Now, miners are people like myself. I could have my PC running right now, and it could be what's called a miner. A miner has a copy of the blockchain of all of the transactions, and it's communicating with thousands and thousands of others. I can actually show you a graphic here if you want. All of those computers are basically working together to verify every transaction. So if somebody throws in a bogus transaction, you have this massive network of thousands of computers that will validate the transactions. And I know I can make it much more complicated. I'm going to keep it at that level. We won't dive deeper into it. But that's the beauty of the network, is they're all validating transactions. It keeps security high. It makes it one of the hardest networks to hack out there. And every block of data stores that information. Miners are rewarded for their participation in this. So let's say that us as a group, we've got Big Eb, Joseph, Tom, Mario, Abby, Christy, Kevin, and others in here. let's say we're all Bitcoin miners, right? And what we're doing is you and I, we all log in with our computer and we're responsible or participating in the maintenance of this network. What happens is every 10 minutes, our computers are trying to solve a complex puzzle, right? I'll leave it at that. It's just a complex puzzle that the Bitcoin network makes. And the goal is that puzzle should take about 10 minutes. Whoever solves that puzzle first is rewarded with Bitcoin. That's how Bitcoins are emitted or released or created. So every 10 minutes right now, you're getting, I believe I'll show you in a second. I forgot whether it went to 6.25. But at the very beginning, every block you solved, you got 50 Bitcoins. And here's what it looks like. When you move over to the very beginning, back in 2009, and you see this little red or orange, red line here, every block of data that was solved received 50 Bitcoins. Now, at 210,000 blocks, it's called a halving. The Bitcoins, the Bitcoin miners no longer got 50, they received 25 Bitcoin. And every 210,000 blocks of data that are solved, the reward for the miners to solve the block gets cut in half, if that makes any sense, okay? Right now, we are just past 12.5. And I'll keep going. Is everybody clear on this? You all understand? The brilliance of this is, at the beginning, the guy who created it, Satoshi Nakamoto, was saying, look, you want to reward people for getting the system going. And as it starts to gain acceptance, they don't need to be rewarded as much. Obviously, back in 2010, 2012, this thing's just a couple of bucks. Now we're talking 11,000. Well, 12.5 Bitcoins at 11,000 is way more than, 50 Bitcoins of a few bucks. So every 210,000 blocks, it halves. And you guys can see this curve is getting slower and slower and slower. For those of you who want a really cheesy trivia question, I got one for you. When will the last Bitcoin be mined? Remember, there is 21 million of them. So if we do simple math and halves and halves and halves on the mining rewards, we know to a pretty precise date when the last Bitcoin will be mined. Anybody have a clue as to when that is? Any just random guesses? I'm guessing a couple of you might know this. It's actually rather interesting because you're thinking at a certain point, the miners, if there's no more incentive for the miners to maintain the network, then Bitcoin could theoretically fall apart, right? If the infrastructure that helps support Bitcoin isn't there, then it starts to fall apart. No, it will. It's actually 2,140 is the targeted estimated date for that. And basically, you're right. If you keep having and having, it'll just get it'll be a decimal point for eternity. But once it goes past 1 Satoshi, which is 7 decimal places, it's considered done. Yeah, it's about 100 it's 2023, 2024. I got 2040 was the number I looked up. So I'll be long dead by then, so I'm not even worried about it. No, not 2022, Abby. It's going to go a lot longer than that. That's when my target is for it to be at least $100,000. All right, so there you go. You got the emission curve. Where are we now with regards to this emission curve? We are right here. We just passed a halving. You might have heard about that. We are at 18.47 million Bitcoins in circulation. So what's interesting, if you look at this right now, there's very few left to be mined, to be minted, if you will. Minted meaning they're going to be created. So out of all of that, there's 2.5 million left. That's what's really interesting. I'm getting there, Dana. I'm getting there. So every time we have, it gets smaller and smaller. We're going to get towards zero. So we look at that piece and we say, okay, well, the traditional mechanism for price discovery was that supply and demand equation. But for Bitcoin, it cannot be that way. Here's why it changes. Notice the blue line that represents supply. We just talked about it being a fixed amount of supply. So the Bitcoin mechanism for price discovery is extremely different. If you look at this one, it's Kevin, it's 2140. Not 2 years from now. I'll be alive or 20 years from now. I'll be alive. I better be. Damn. So this is where it all changes. And there's more factors that will change this, but I'm starting piece by piece, right? So the supply side here is the interesting point because we no longer have it fluctuating. In fact, if we were to take this picture right here, you could argue that if demand meets that supply line right here, that's where price should be. Now, let's add to this. For me, you have an asset class that's in its infancy. It has a lot of naysayers, a lot of skepticism in the industry. However, there's a lot of major firms who are now starting to accept Bitcoin, right? You have more firms coming. Look at Overstock. One of the reasons Overstock's balance sheets is doing so damn well is because they have been accepting Bitcoin. They do have Bitcoin on their balance sheets. It might not be a ton, but they have been accepting payments. Other businesses are as well. And as we see that adoption start to happen, what happens to our demand curve? Right? Look at the picture I have here in red. That's your demand curve. Let's say normal, every day is fine. But what happens if all of a sudden Amazon, and I'm making this up just as an example, what if Amazon all of a sudden said, hey, you know what? Not only are we going to accept Bitcoin, but we're going to do Bitcoin transactions on Amazon.com. That curve is going to shift. You're going to see a giant shift in that, and I'll put 2 red arrows on here and show you like the whole curve for demand could jump. And if that happens, then all of a sudden price gets significantly higher. Now, let's say the government comes in and says, you know what, we're actually okay with it as tender, blah, 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 blah. And then we see this supply or demand shift again. The more that demand increases here, the better that is for supply. So that is what I'm calling the demand impacts, okay, everybody? I'm trying to keep it very basic. I know some of you want me to go much deeper. I'm not going to do that yet. So there's your basics for Bitcoin's price discovery. And I think it's interesting because every time we get a shift up in the demand curve, it's going to significantly boost price. And that's what we've been seeing. Now, I want to go through one more right here. Destruction. Yes, destruction is the next piece. This is one I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. What do you think when I'm talking about destruction? What do you mean? Like, what do you think I'm talking about? Destruction sounds so ominous, right? It's just terror and pain and mayhem. Destruction may be one of the single greatest factors for Bitcoin's price appreciation, and I believe it's going to continue significantly. Anybody know what destruction means in regards to Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies? Well, I've mentioned this many times before, but I have a bunch of Bitcoin here at my house. Not physical Bitcoin. I have obviously the codes for it. Also some in my safe deposit boxes. I got stuff all over the place. If you were to lose your private key and you forgot it, your dog ate it, your computer, maybe you had to store it on your computer and the hard drive crashed and you lost your Bitcoin. That's called destruction. Destruction is where those Bitcoins are physically removed from supply. There's no longer those Bitcoins out there. So what's beautiful in that equation is even though we have a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins, the curve is always going to be getting lower. We'll never have more than 20 million, and we'll never actually have 21 million in circulation because the curve will always be losing Bitcoins. You'll have dummies like me. I personally sent 2 Litecoins. Was it 2 Litecoins? It was $370 worth of Litecoin that disappeared. I don't have the private key. Those will never be recovered. It's gone forever. That's called destruction. Now, take a guess, folks. Out of the 21 million total, the 18.47 million that's in circulation, how many are deemed to be lost, believed to be lost? James Lopp, one of the major security experts out there, has said that he believes there's a specific number of crypto or Bitcoin that have been lost. Any guesses out there on how much of that supply is no longer with us, will never be targeted? What do you think? Any guesses? What do you think? We lost 100,000, 200,000, lost them all? I mean, this is key because we're focusing on the maximum amount of supply as being that ceiling, which is going to drive price. Oh, Brendan, you nerd. Yes, Brendan nailed it. It's right about 4 million is the estimate. My gut tells me more, but let me show you. There's an agency out there called, I'll bring it up right here, Chainalysis. And they have looked at the blockchain and deemed to be about 4 million have been lost. Which is, no, Joseph, is not 0.5%. It's 4 million. Right? 4 million out of 21 million. I mean, you're talking almost 20% of the total that will ever be out there is already gone. So what does that do to price? Right? Yeah, it's like 20% right now missing. Actually, let me show you something here real quick. I think you guys might like this. If you want to talk, maybe you've had a bad day, right? You're thinking you're having a rough day. Oh, I can tell you, it's not as bad as this guy. I would probably have committed Harry Carey if this happened to me. I want you guys to notice this line I'm highlighting right now. You guys see this number right here? Here's an address that has not been touched. Bitcoin address that has not been touched for 5 years. Nothing has moved from this address. My guess is somebody moved this amount in and lost their private key. They may have died, right? They may have, that's one of the factors, is somebody could have died with this. Look at the value of this account right now, guys. It's $903 million. That's a $903 million sitting in the digital Ethernet that has not moved in 5 years. My guess is somebody lost it. Yeah, Big Eb. $903 million. And if you click on the address, you can see it's been there for a while. Give me just a second. It was actually up at $1.5 billion. Right? Here you can see the price of Bitcoin. This blue line at the top represents the inflow or change in the amount of coins. There hasn't been any change. This guy basically is just sitting on 80,000 Bitcoin. Yeah. Oh, that, I lost my key. Come on, Batista, admit it. You would be losing your mind. I would be going through, I don't know what I would be doing if I knew I had 80,000 Bitcoins and I lost the private key. Oh my God. But you look down here, I'm scrolling down, back in, where is it at? Bear with me. Sorry, I know I'm scrolling through stuff very quickly here. It's going to hurt your eyes. Right here, if you go back to December 16th, 2017, this address was worth $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. And it's just sitting there. Now, I didn't bring it up for that. I thought that might be interesting for you guys to see. What's more noteworthy for me is this graphic right here. Most people are using the assumption that 5 years is kind of the benchmark for lost coins. Right? If it hasn't moved in 5 years, it's probably someone forgot the key. So this is a really cool chart. You can go and see how many addresses have moved in what period of time. If we click this dormant for 5 years, you can see right here, exactly 4 million Bitcoins have not moved in the last 5 years. So the assumption is that those are lost. And my belief is that those numbers will continue to increase as people forget their private keys. I'm deathly afraid that I'm going to lose one of my private keys and lose Bitcoin. So it's a dangerous game, but that's just a fact of the industry. So how does this impact? How does this push Bitcoin to $100,000 by 2023? Here's how it does it. If we looked at that basic pricing mechanism for Bitcoin, I think that we would all agree that if supply was 21 million max and I'm now removing 4 million from it, that whole supply curve shifts. Does everyone agree with that? If you don't understand supply and demand. So here's where it gets interesting. Watch what happens to the price curves. I want you to pay particular attention to the red curves, right? Because if supply shifts over and reduces from 21 million to 17 million, then all of a sudden you have the same amount of demand chasing limited supply, price goes up, right? So now you can see these red lines that have the price numbers, they don't match. I need to move those up and all of a sudden price moves higher. So for every time that we get loss of supply or we get destruction in the cryptocurrency space, you're going to see more and more price movement to the upside for Bitcoin. So that is the basics of my assumption as to why it'll be 100,000. Now, someone asked earlier on, said, hey, can you go over the pros and cons to it? Sure. Just for the basics of this conversation, when we look at the pros, like what would fuel Bitcoin moving up even higher, I tried to pick 4 on each side. Adoption. Adoption is going to be the number one thing. The more mainstream that Bitcoin becomes, the more that there's going to be access to all of us. And meaning, you go to the store and now it'll be like a point of sale item. You could be using Bitcoin seamlessly with other currencies. When that starts to happen, you'll get a lot more transactions out of it. Transaction brings an adoption, makes it easier for people to buy it, and you start to get everybody buying Bitcoin, because obviously it's got the buzzword attached to it, maybe some other crypto, but at least the acceptance, the adoption is key to the growth of Bitcoin. Number 2 on that list is destruction. That's not going to go away. It's going to continue to destroy cryptocurrencies, and they will disappear. Who knows? We get 30 years down the road, there might only be 10 million Bitcoin in circulation. And if you have people that are chasing that 10 million, price is going to be going up. Another factor for Bitcoin moving to the upside is going to be scarcity. And again, I think that when you look at Bitcoin compared to every other cryptocurrency, almost every other cryptocurrency has way more in circulation, right? Bitcoin was done as a small experiment. I think others said, hey, we want to have a lot more out there. There are far more cryptocurrencies that have 100 million, 100 billion Ripple are out there. That's one of the reasons I'm not that big on Ripple. Let me just see if I can bring it up here just to give you an idea. Here you go. I know it's hard to see, but I'm going to just show you, and I'll sort by number of coins. So there are a couple here, like this Maker, Compound. These are really low number of coins. I don't know if they're finished or being done. I know there's still an emission curve for Dash, but most of these are pretty low. Now, you can go up to some of the bigger names, like BitTorrent. You've got 170 billion BitTorrent tokens. Dogecoin's got 124 billion. I get all these people like jumping on the Dogecoin bandwagon. There's 124 billion of them, guys. It's not going to move. You've got Tron, that's got 66 billion. Ripple, right? Okay, so this is actually kind of misleading. Ripple says there's 45 billion. That's in circulation. The other 55 are sitting at the Ripple holding company. That to me is also problematic. So anyway, I wanted to show you that just so you get a sense as to what we're, some of the, it's kind of like shares outstanding for stocks. You look at one of the reasons Overstock has gone absolutely parabolic is there's almost no shares out there. You look at something like Apple, you got billions of shares out there. So big difference there. It's enough for traders to capitalize on. Sorry to say only 1% of people. Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying. Anel Rag? That's great name. You got me on that one. Clever. If you have 1% adoption right now, great. I've got an $11,000 item with 1% adoption. What if I get to 2? If I get to 5%, I'm already at my $100,000 mark, right? So it doesn't take a lot to, I would never say that Bitcoin will be 100% accepted. No, it won't. But man, if I got to 5% or 10%, all of a sudden, that $100,000 is, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, shooting towards $1 million. So that's to me the key behind it is adoption will help that, and you're seeing more and more of it. I had some stats from Coinbase earlier, not Coinbase. Let me see. I pulled some facts and figures for you guys earlier on, but I was trying to do so much prep at the very last second for this one, I didn't write it all down. But let me read these facts and figures to you because they were interesting with regards to the expansion. So basically, to talk about adoption increasing, if you look at Coinstar, reported 40% increase in Bitcoin ATM use since February of this year. They've also seen Bitcoin ATMs rising to 8,000, which is a 90% increase since 2019. So you're getting a lot of big increases in retail access. And to me, it's not just retail acceptance I'm talking about here. I'm talking about institutional acceptance too. Remember Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan talking smack on Bitcoin. Hey, if this guy actually gets called out on it, he was actually buying Bitcoin that day. He was on TV. His firm was buying Bitcoin. When you get Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs backing or using that resource of Bitcoin, they're whales, right? They're going to be driving price up. So that's part of the pro I have for this one. The last one I have, and you might find this is shocking, is regulation. Most people view regulation as a big thorn in the side for cryptocurrency and something that's going to bring it down. It doesn't have to be that way. It could also be positive regulation. Instead of the U.S. government or other governments saying we're shutting down Bitcoin altogether, maybe there's some sort of concession. Yeah, we'll work with Bitcoin and they'll allow it. And if there's any thumbs up of approval by a government agency for Bitcoin as accepted currency in their country, adoption is going to spike big time, right? There's some... I'm in America. I know some of you guys are in Canada. You don't have these issues, but there's many of them, many countries out there that don't have a stable financial system, and using a cryptocurrency or a digital currency is critical for them to even manage their money. You got hyperinflation going on around the world. You want to be holding fiat currency during hyperinflation? I know. All right, it's obviously not all good. There's many things that could crush this in no time. Here is the con side, or some of the cons, and we can discuss that. I know many of you are in there throwing ideas around, but I wanted to get through this. Number one is going to be hacking. Yeah, they were seeing, different sites being hacked. Of course, that's probably because of insider people having access to the private keys. But hacking is one of the things that is going to be problematic. Theft as well. You look at this piece here. If someone breaks SHA-256, which is simply the coding mechanism behind Bitcoin's algorithm, it's how they do their private keys and public key structure. If somebody breaks that, this whole thing goes to zero in no time. Absolutely zero. It'll just completely collapse. And that's definitely a potential. It could happen. I don't think it'll happen yet. Maybe, give it another 20, 30 years, we might have the computing power to crack it. But I don't think that'll happen anytime. And then, of course, regulation, that double-edged sword. You start to get to countries saying, hey, we're not going to allow Bitcoin at all, and we'll shut you down, and criminal charges if you're using it. They could go extreme that way too, and that, of course, would put some pressure on it. But remember, part of the appeal of Bitcoin is that they can't shut it down. Unless they were to shut down all of those computers around the world, you wouldn't be able to stop Bitcoin. And the odds are they're not going to stop all the computers around the world. Yes, there's other considerations like a 51% attack and many other things, but I tried to keep this at a high level because if I look at the math behind simple supply and demand, right, those two equations, what makes it unique is I have a fixed amount of supply that won't increase. Not only that, but it'll never be 21 million in circulation. It will always be dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. I would disagree. Not all improvements for cryptos are never done. That's not true at all. No, absolutely not. There's always being improvements to different systems. And if you look at different cryptocurrencies, their infrastructure might change. Their rules might change. As a consensus, that's what's called a consensus algorithm, they can go and vote and change certain parameters to make the system more efficient. Yeah, Bitcoin has a bunch of forks of it. You have Bitcoin Gold and Diamond and Bitcoin Cash and Satoshi Vision. Yeah, that's a bunch of garbage. They're all trying to take something and improve upon it. But basically, it's a money grab in my opinion. I'm not complaining because I made a lot of money off of the forks that happened in Bitcoin in the past. But hey, so that's what it is. No, that's not exactly true. So again, this is the problem is a lot of people have a mindset of different cryptocurrencies being doggedly slow or not being able to service the transactions. If you look at Bitcoin, yeah, Bitcoin is very slow. But if you do the technology, which is called Lightning Network on top of that, then all of a sudden we can facilitate much greater transaction amounts with Bitcoin. There are other ones out there that are doing a million transactions a day, multi-million transactions a day. So it's not that they're all inherently slow. The ones that started off early certainly are slow. But I'll be honest, I'm not the type of person that's going to be going out and using my Bitcoin at like Bitcoin ATMs. It's just too slow block time, right? It takes 10 minutes for a block to settle. I might use Dash, right? I might use Dash that gives me instant transaction settlements. But how am I going to buy Dash? I'm buying it with Bitcoin. So think of like, you're in college, you're trying to find your drug dealer, right? You started off with the guy that was selling you pot, and then he hooked you onto somebody who was selling something heavier. Bitcoin's like the way to get you into the crypto space. Most platforms now, if you want to go into a specific trading exchange, you got to move in Bitcoin or one of the other majors, and then you can buy your Dogecoin and your lower tier coins. But you got to do it with Bitcoin. Yes. So. Here, let me show you, if you want something that's transaction ability, so you got to look at it this way. Cryptocurrency is going to fall into one of three categories. You can have your Bitcoin, which will be predominantly a store of value, right? It will be digital gold. I believe it's digital gold. That's my perspective. Take it or leave it. Then you have the programmability ones, where we can now start writing smart contracts onto their blockchain. That would be Ethereum. Then you have level 3, which is taking that and adding a layer around it, which facilitates greater transactions. To me, that'd be something like an EOS, where you can do millions of transactions, and all of a sudden now I have a digital cryptocurrency that rivals Visa or MasterCard. And if I'm a merchant and Visa's charging me 3% commissions, but I can be using Ripple and paying no commissions, where do you think I'm going? It's a transition that will probably happen in the near future. Of course, Visa and MasterCard are trying to crush those guys, but it's not that they're not all the same project, right? You want ones with speed, you find the ones with speed. You want ones with security, you find the ones with security. You want ones with to be anonymous, such as ZK Snarks or Zcash or it starts with an M. I totally forgot. But there's a lot of them out there that are purely anonymous with ring signatures and all kinds of crazy crypto algorithm stuff that I don't want to get into here. But that's pretty much it. Adam says, can I go over the best way to currently invest in Bitcoin? Personally, I would go and buy Bitcoin itself, right? And certainly you want to go, if you do, you want to go in and make sure you understand it. I'm trying to get the Bitcoin class I created for Online Trading Academy and bring that over, but they're hesitant on that one. So I'm still pushing, but basically that'll walk you through the ins and outs of where to store it. I saw some questions earlier asking about what's the best way to store it. I do like my private keys. I like my Nano Ledger S. Brendan, who's with us today, he's a big crypto buff. He uses a Trezor. Great. You want that cold storage. I love paper wallets, right? That's a great one for me. I love paper wallets, but keeping them on an exchange or on your phone, I mean, that's always susceptible. So you got to be real careful there because, again, you lose that private key and you're now part of the destruction phase and you're starting to lose those cryptocurrencies. Last thing you want to do is lose it. Well, and I think that's part of the question. It says how to implement these changes in one world government. Well, I mean, you're talking a much bigger picture. Look, the government's going to be in on this soon. We're going to have a Fed coin here in no time. I was making the joke yesterday. I'm walking around stores here in Southern California, and a lot of them are saying, you must have exact change because of the coin shortage. Well, that's a bunch of crap. It's not a coin shortage, guys. It's they don't want us to be using currency anymore. They want to push it towards a Fed coin, which will probably happen, but that's not what Bitcoin is, right? Fed coin is the exact opposite. Fed coin is a centrally controlled digital currency. I'm not even call it crypto. Centrally controlled digital currency that they can increase or decrease that amount of supply at their leisure, which basically means it's a fiat currency. It's garbage. Let's see. Other than Bitcoin, what would your next one to look at? I would take Ethereum. Definitely Ethereum. And the reason I think Ethereum is not because of its store of value or its security. It's because if you look at it, think of Ethereum like a tree with no branches whatsoever. That's the blockchain for Ethereum. But what Ethereum allows you to do is you can plug in your branch. So now the tree is full of branches and it's everybody's projects plugging into their blockchain. And the reason I think that that's so valuable is because not only is there a vested interest in Ethereum keeping their blockchain running, there's a vested interest in anybody who's connected to Ethereum to keep Ethereum running. So now you have this indispensable, backbone in Ethereum that's powering a lot of digital projects, we'll say. You get a lot of tokens and things like that, which we can go down that rabbit hole another time. But this is why I believe Bitcoin will be 100,000. I'm going to try to wrap that up here so I can move on to just open Q&A. This is definitely why I believe Bitcoin will be $100,000 by 2023 is the simple scarcity. It's also the fear that we have of our fiat currency. I mean, I have a bunch in different cryptocurrencies, but I certainly do not trust my government, right? I mean, how many of you actually really trust your government? I'm willing to bet not many. If that happened, government would either shut it down. Well, you can't shut it down. You cannot shut down Bitcoin. That's why it's easier. It's why it's so great to use. Here, let me see if I can bring this up real quick. See if I can find I saw this really cool Bitcoin mining map a while back, and I had it in part of my class, but I don't know where it ended up going. And basically it was a map of the world, and it showed all of the different miners around the world. That was really, really cool. Trey Dime says, what's your thoughts on Ripple XRP? Oh God! You trust your government? Man, that goes to your handle there. No way, you trust your government, man? Something's fundamentally wrong there. Shoot, I don't know where that one's at. I'll maybe show it up another time. But basically, I can show you the map around the world. There's so many different nodes running the Bitcoin code, blockchain, but they can't shut it down. The government can say all they want, but right now, if the government said we'll make it illegal, you can't have Bitcoin. They can't touch my Bitcoin. I can always make the argument that I just lost my private key and I no longer have it. That's the easy way around it. I'm going to just call you AS because I don't like your handle name. You ask what value is crypto without the stock market. It's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the stock market. It's a totally separate asset class. It's not on an exchange. Yeah, you have derivatives on the exchange. You have your GBTC, you have Bitcoin futures. They're not on an exchange. They are on cryptocurrency exchanges. It's totally separate. What makes them better? I can trade them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, no breaks, ever. Try doing that in other ones. So Trade Time, I asked about my thoughts on XRP, Ripple. I used to be really big on Ripple. I thought Ripple was going to be the lead dog, the one that took us to a better transactional system because if you look at the SWIFT banking system, you try to wire money around the world, I have to pay a huge fee, it's slow, I got to do tons of paperwork, it's a cumbersome process, and who knows, I've heard about SWIFT payments being lost. Ripple was trying to replace that, right? It was trying to be basically the big money big money transactions and overseas. You're talking a couple seconds transactions, any amount of money, I don't have to fill out any extra paperwork. I thought that was the way to go. what's happening is now companies are starting to do that on their own, right? To create their own projects. So Ripple, I think, I don't know. I just don't see it getting to the point they thought it was going to be. I think the Fed now is going to do their own thing, right? The Fed will create the Fed coin, and that'll basically replace Ripple. They don't need Ripple. They have their own transactional coin to be doing transactions of any value at any time, and they have the total record of it all. So that said, I still have like 60,000 Ripple. I have a lot of it. I just am not very confident in its business prospects going forward. All right, what other questions do I got? Merlin, what platforms and sites are best for buying these cryptocurrencies? Brendan is also voiced in this one a little bit here. I saw basically probably the biggest and best out there is Binance. Binance is awesome, but they're a foreign company. So there's a red flag right there. I don't know. To me, that's sketchy. I do have a Binance account. I think they'll actually be one of the best. I mean, they're awesome. I mean, they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're establishing themselves as a juggernaut in the crypto space around the world, both listing cryptocurrencies and tokens, great transaction fees, great customer service. It's just in China. I have this thing where I'm so worried about, my account just all of a sudden being frozen. Hey, AS, you know what else ISIS accepts? US dollars. Don't pull that crap in here. I hate that comment. Oh, terrorists are using cryptocurrencies. I'm going to be polite and say, if you believe that terrorists and nefarious people are using like Bitcoin and things like that, you're a complete friggin' idiot. It's totally traceable. No terrorist is going to use Bitcoin. Yes, Monero they could be using, that's for sure. But look, they're using US dollars too because that's not traceable. So there's way more transactions being done in US dollars amongst terrorist organizations than there is with cryptocurrency. So don't throw that crap in here. That bugs the crap out of me. Oh, it's for drug dealers and terrorists. No, it's not. That's called the US dollar. $100 bill. All right, what else I got? Who does not have a Bitcoin TradeStation account besides GBC? One of the other ones you could be using, I like Coinbase Pro, not Coinbase, but Coinbase Pro, because Coinbase's fees are way too high. I definitely prefer Coinbase Pro because the fees are much lower, and it looks much more like a regular transaction one. It's really the only major one in the U.S., which is why I keep some of my stuff there. Most of it's on cold storage. No, Thomas, it's not him. It's just that comment. Years ago when I was doing my first class for cryptocurrencies, this guy was saying the same thing. He's like, oh gosh, only terrorists and drug dealers use Bitcoin. I'm like, oh my God. That to make that statement, it's so easy to get caught. I can go and I can pull up the blockchain right now for Bitcoin and show you where every Bitcoin has ever gone over the history of time. And I can simply watch and track it and see when it gets pulled out, identify it, nail that person, and they're busted. So, guys, if you're doing illegal stuff, don't use the ones that are open source ledgers, distributed ledger stuff. You want to be using, anything with, Zcash, Monero, ZK Snarks. That kind of technology is what you want if you're going to be needing to be anonymous. But I don't need that type of thing. I'm a general consumer. I'm not worried about doing illegal activities. All right, what do I got? Can you set limit orders on Coinbase Pro? Yeah, you can. I think I actually had the program up there. Let me see if I can bring it up for you real quick. Coinbase Pro. I think I had it running the other day, but if it has me do a big login process, I won't do that. Let me check it real quick for you guys. Yeah, there we go. So I'll bring it over here for you. As that loads up, I'll show you. Instant deposit, USD. So here is, this is Coinbase Pro. It looks pretty much like a TradeStation, a Thinkorswim. It's got your regular trading applications, but it's all for cryptos. What's nice about Coinbase Pro is how they've changed it over the years. These are all the different pairs you can trade now. It used to just be one. It was Bitcoin USD, and then there was more, and then they've gotten much, much better. But that's it. Here's your Bitcoin USD right now, trading 11.2. Still got my 2 Bitcoin. I don't even know what's my total account over here. I don't use this one much anymore. I'm not that much of an active trader. But Medic, I've not heard of Power Ledger. That's the... Yeah, actually I have. If that's the one that's like a little chip they're talking about, it's like a nuclear chip. I saw some really interesting thing the other day, but it's eluding me right now as we speak. So let me wrap this one up, guys, because I could go on and on and on. And I'll run back through and see some questions here. I didn't get a chance to pull up the economic calendars or anything for tomorrow, so it's been a rough couple of days. But and you know what you guys can do? Maybe what we'll do is I can do a follow-up one day, and you guys just send in your questions. You can put them underneath the video on YouTube, and I'll answer them there. Or go to TraderMerlin. You know, we've done this before, where you can send in your questions here, because it looks to me like there's a lot of questions I just didn't get a chance to get to. But, you know, we're already at 45 minutes, and I got to wrap up here and get going on some other stuff. Philip says, pros and cons vis-a-vis physical gold, since both are alternatives to fiat. I personally think there's a place for both. At its core, I like gold better. It's tricky. I say I like gold better because I can hold it, I can feel it, I can hide it under my pillow if I want. The other thing is, if I'm buying gold, I'm under the assumption that there's limited, right? I don't know for a fact that we have this limit that they say on gold. You know, all of a sudden they come up with some secret vault and flood it. I don't know. I'm always skeptical about numbers that people quote me, which is why I do like the max ceiling on Bitcoin, because you can read through the code. It's in there. It's locked in. So I think that there's a place for both of them. You know, we talked about this in the portfolio show the other day. I'm sure most financial advisors want to kick my butt for saying this, but I do think that your long-term portfolio should have cryptocurrency exposure. Now, I'm not saying it should be 50%, but, you know, maybe 5% exposure. You know, if your total commodity exposure is supposed to be, let's say, 10%, well, maybe I go in and I've got gold, I got some silver, that makes up 5%, and the other 5, I'll buy a small basket of cryptocurrencies. I think you need to be careful there. In the 15 that I have, I think it's 15 now. It's just sold out of one junk coin that was pretty much gone, so I almost threw it away. I think that you got to really shop around and spread it around. There's, you know, questions about different cryptocurrencies here. I want one for transactional value, or I want one for smart contracts, which I think is going to be huge down the road, guys. Smart contracts is going to be phenomenal, especially from the betting side and gambling world. You'll see casinos now using smart contracts all settled online. And for those that don't know how a smart contract works, I'll real quickly tell you. If you have a buyer and a seller, so let's say Brendan and I want to make a wager, right? And I tell Brendan, I go, hey man, Southern California, on October 31st, Halloween, the weather here is going to be less, it'll never get higher than 65 degrees. And Brendan's like, no way, dude. I know it's going to be more than that. I know it's going to be more than that. Okay, well, let's wager. So we put in a digital fee. We put it into this blockchain. It goes straight into a smart contract. So I'll say, okay, I'm sending my $100 in. Brendan sends his 100 in. As soon as that $100 reaches and we're both in, the contract is now in force. And what we'll do is we'll pull up what's called an oracle. And that's basically, oracle is the reference that you give your contract. So we can say it's going to be weather.com. Well, that day, weather.com will be referenced. If at any point the temperature was over that amount, it automatically pays Brendan. If it doesn't get over, it pays me. Smart contract. No, I don't have to worry about following up or having some guy not pay me. Smart contracts could have huge potential. And that's going to be things like, really like Ethereum. I think Ethereum is going to continue to move on. So, all right, what else do I got? Well, honestly, I like Bitcoin better right now. I kind of do too. I think gold's gotten a little bit ahead of itself right now, but again, I think that's why you have the mix of assets, right? Putting everything in one is obviously crazy, especially dealing with something like crypto, but I think the exposure there is good. Yes, Big Eb, it's exactly like an escrow account, right? But there's no argument. We cannot argue because you've told it to reference this site, pay it, done. To me, I love it. I mean, I've made wagers with my friends in Northern California for sporting events. Like, hey, Scott, you got that $20 you owe me? Oh, yeah, man, I'll get paid next week. You never have to worry about that. It's already in there. You can't make the wager if you don't have the money. Yeah, smart contracts. Ethereum is really kind of the pioneer of that. Now you're getting something like EOS, which can do way more transactional volume. I mean, Ethereum, EOS runs circles around Ethereum. It just hasn't quite taken off yet, right? It hasn't quite gotten that level of acceptance. So there you go. All right. What else do I got? Oh yeah, Big Eb, gold 2,300 by year end. I don't think that would be that challenging of a move. Let's bring up GC. I'll bring up at GC since I don't have the economic calendars and earnings for tomorrow, guys. You're right now at 1932. So here's your GC. You were mentioned 23. I'll actually just tweak the scale here so we can see where that 2,300 is. I think I don't see that being a problem. It's definitely a ways up there. I mean, from current levels, if you're looking at getting to that price point, let me see how far we'd have to move from today's levels. 18% move. Not really that, I don't think that would be out of line at all. You know, when we look at things from the historical perspective, it's a little bit different because this is adjusted. But if I go monthly, you guys can see on this one, I'll go way back. You know, we are adjusted. So I think it's 107XN or is it 103XN? I can't remember exactly what the modifier is for TradeStation. I think it's at GC equals 107. I think it's 107. 107XN, and then that will adjust it. Yeah, this looks about right. So we're obviously at all-time highs on that on the gold futures chart, and 2,300 seems definitely logical for me. Yep, and I think that's part of the exposure, Brendan. Brendan's talking about junior miners. Says they're still full of opportunity. You know, that's part of that exposure. If you're looking at, you know, let's say part of your portfolio, do you earmark 10% for commodities? Yeah, I don't know if I would just buy 10% of physical gold. I might, for me, I would probably have a majority of that 10% in gold, but I would also have some miners. I would have some silver royalties companies, some Freeport-McMoRan, and spread it around. Is it 120XN? Thanks, Raj. That'll change this even better. At GC equals 120XN. They always tweak them. I never. So you got pretty much the same picture there. Anyway, guys, that will do it for today. I'm hoping that some of you saw the logic behind the math why Bitcoin will be at that value. And again, it really boils down to scarcity, destruction, and that fixed number of supply. Any shift up in acceptance or adoption of Bitcoin will huge move up in the price. And we'll see how institutions jump on board. You know, we heard nothing but negativity about institutions for years on it. Now all of a sudden they're changed their tune and they're starting to back some of the cryptocurrency projects. So that could certainly add more acceptance into the crypto space, as you saw today in chat. You got some people like, oh, it's nothing, it's fake, it's voodoo, it's smoke and mirrors. I'll be honest, some of the projects are. Some of these crypto projects are garbage, dude. You really need to do your research, but if you go with the ones that are the lead dog, it's like picking the bellwether stocks. I'm going to buy the ones that are the top dogs and are going to stay there. Bitcoin will probably be there. Ethereum will probably be there as number 1 and number 2. I actually think you'll always have a place for Monero, even though that one's, if any of them get shut down, it will be Monero, because that one is making the case of purely anonymous. And I actually love the technology. It's really cool with their ring signatures the way they do, but totally anonymous. I mean, if you want to wash money and make money disappear, that's where you got to go. So, all right, let me see. I'm going to scroll back here just a bit because I want to make sure Big Eb gets his 1-hour show today. Let me scroll up here and see if I missed it. If you guys got any last-minute ones, feel free to send those on in. I'd be happy to try to get to them. You guys are pretty active on the chat today. Thank you. Appreciate it. You know, it's funny. I made a comment about, do you trust in your government? And one guy's like, I trust my government. And then he says in the next sentence, I don't trust the Indian government. I don't trust governments, period. I don't trust any government, period. I mean, I was made a joke last night. I was at the beach with some friends for a friend's going away party. And I'm like, guys, we really got to get home so I can watch the Republican National Convention. And they all look at me like, are you serious? I'm like, no. I'd rather sit on the beach with my friends and enjoy life. I'll vote when my time comes to vote, but I don't want to watch either party tell me all the things that I want to hear, so I vote for them. I'll make my decisions some other way. Anyway. All right, what else do we got? Any last minute ones? Exxon is one of the best stocks to hold. Yeah, well, until it gets removed from the Dow. Kojo, what about Tron? Yeah, that's an interesting one. I actually do have a lot of Tron. I bought it real cheap. I think Justin Sun is an interesting character. I think he's a pirate, a little bit of a thief out there. I mean, his original white paper was a straight copy of someone else's. White paper is what a cryptocurrency will usually do, is like a marketing brochure to tell you what this cryptocurrency is all about, or token. You know, it started off as a token, now it's its own blockchain. You know, when you have multi-billion dollars come in instantly, you can really do a lot. And I think Justin Sun has connections. He knows people. I think that Tron could definitely be something. I didn't like the original white paper, but I like the fact that he's got billions of dollars now to build something with it. Let's hope he does do that. I do own Tron. Yeah, Jay Sun. He's a weird dude, man, but you got to love his enthusiasm. He's making stuff happen. So, thoughts on Bitcoin ETFs like GBTC? The reason I don't like it, Tom, I mentioned this in the past, is GBTC actually owns physical Bitcoin. So GBTC is out there buying physical Bitcoin, what happens is there's a delay in the point where they can own that physical Bitcoin, or if there's redemptions and buying and selling going on with GBTC, you'll find that the price of GBTC sometimes is much higher than Bitcoin and much lower at times. So with GBTC, I think you're really wanting to time the market more and make sure when you buy GBTC, you understand if you're overpaying or underpaying, because the swings are really odd with that one. So that's my only take there. Ooh, you got 1 million Tron? Attaboy, Koja. Hey, when that thing hits a couple of bucks, you're buying the whiskey. GBTC. Let me bring up GBTC. Well, no. Anyway, let's see. Let's keep going here. Yeah, I've still got a bunch of mine. I'm going to hold on that one for a while. Anyway, can different cryptocurrencies and coins interact? Well, so yes and no. There are some, what do they call that? It's not Lightning Network. It's called, it's been so long. There's actually a technology, I cannot remember what the name was called. I'm sure we've got some crypto people here way more versed. But there are some technologies that will go and convert for you, meaning it can make them interact. For the life of me right now, I cannot think of it. Most of the ERC20 tokens, which are all the ones that are on the Ethereum blockchain, it's a standardized code. Those are pretty much interchangeable. So you can have exchanges now that are just ERC20 tokens, and all they're doing is plugging into the Ethereum blockchain and making the transactions there. So it's pretty much token swapping, right? That's what it is. As far as me going out right now and swapping, Bitcoin for Monero, there are exchanges that will do that. You can go on to certain ones and click a button and it will convert right away right there. It does that, but you can't go to Bitcoin's blockchain and say, hey, I'm throwing down some Monero on this one for you. Took a free trade on Polkadot. Nice. I'd have to look at Polkadot. I haven't checked that one out. I kind of backed away from cryptos for a while as I was doing a lot of other projects, but my top ones, I really like Dash. Dash was really pushing transactionally. They were going to have a Dash card. I like their network. I like that they have a community chest where they're basically taking some of the mining awards and putting it back in the community. So I really like that aspect, so they can continue to fund operations to get Dash bigger. I like Monero from the anonymous perspective, also Zcash. Yeah, Big Ab, I'm going to look at that one first. Let me do a little bit of research on Polkadot first. Neo's actually pretty good. I mean, there's a ton, guys. Look, I guess you got to look at it from what do you... Nope, your dealer wouldn't know the difference. Dealer doesn't care. But good luck counterfeiting Bitcoin. Good luck with that one. It all depends on what your goals are. I spread mine around between a lot of different pools where I thought, okay, I like this one from the anonymous side. I have a little bit of Monero. I like Dash because of the company and the structure and the way that their reward system is set up. I like Bitcoin as my number one just because I like the stability and safety of the SHA-256 and the way that it's all done with the miners and the way that they're not changing anything. Plus, everything forks off of Bitcoin, so I get the rewards there if you know how to claim a fork. I also have a bunch of Litecoin. I think Litecoin is your surrogate. It's like silver to Bitcoin's gold. The only thing that Litecoin has done is take Bitcoin's code and multiply everything by 4. It's 4 times faster. It's got 4 times as many coins, 4 times as fast block settlement. So you really got to study. Yeah, Brandon says, I study crypto full-time, including software development. There's a lot to learn. And I think when I built mine out, I went through and I said, okay, I like this project. It's a flyer. Right? With cryptos, a lot of the stuff that you're going to be doing, and Brendan, I think you could probably validate this one as well, you're going to put a lot of your assets in companies that are going to be the ones that are going to be the lead dogs, your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, and stuff like that. But you're also going to put your ones in, really the long shot, right? Your Civic tokens or some of these other really small ones that all of a sudden could become a big adopted. Civic was going to do a blockchain digital security identification system. Interesting. Right? We can just basically access their blockchain and we can all have our secure identity on there. It could be bad, but part of your portfolio should be those high flyers, especially with crypto, because you're getting some phenomenal gains in those spaces. So why not have, it's already your risk portfolio anyway, so have a little bit maybe more risky. I'm not going to shade anybody for doing their things. We got the hour mark. Whee! We got the hour mark. All right. Well, I guess, Ardell, bottom line is for anybody in here, if you're getting into the crypto space, you better sure as heck know what you're doing because, I pat myself on the back. I think I'm a pretty intelligent person. I know some of you don't think I'm an idiot, but that's okay. I think I'm a pretty intelligent person, and I followed step by step. I have checklists of things to do, and I still lost cryptocurrency. I still lost it. When the government seizes Bitcoin, can they use it for Bitcoin goes into destruction? They sell it. If you look what happened to Silk Road, when they confiscated all those Bitcoin, they ended up selling them on the open market. So if they can get the private key, then they can do that. So they'll go and sell it. I think what was it? Was it the Marshalls? I forgot who ended up selling the Bitcoin, but I think they sold it to the Draper family. He bought it all, and there was a lot of Bitcoin in there. And that guy's, he's rich just because of that transaction when Silk Road went down. All right. Cool. I'm at the hour mark. As you guys can tell, I'm getting tired. So I'm going to wrap it up. Tomorrow I have no guests. It'll be open Q&A. So I think what we can do if you want, the sooner you send them in, the more likely I'll be able to... Wait, tomorrow's... What day is today? Today's Thursday? Yeah, Thursday. So tomorrow's Friday. I have no guests in the program. So you guys feel free to send in questions. You can go to TraderMerlin.com to send them that way if you want to keep them private. The best way, which helps me out, is actually you put them underneath the YouTube video. The more chat that's underneath the YouTube videos does better for the channel, apparently. So you guys can do that. Other than that, I will field any questions for tomorrow. Have a nice frosty beverage cocktail because God knows we all need one. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you.